Welcome back, everybody, to Beyond the Unknown. I'm Alex Carter, and I'm excited, as always, to be diving into another mystery with all of you.
And I'm Olivia Reyes, ready to explore the strange and unusual as always.
Today, we're going back in time a little bit, back to 1961.
A pivotal year, full of historical moments.
JFK, the space race, Cold War tensions,
Mm.
so much happening.
Definitely a time of great change and uncertainty, which makes it the perfect setting for episode 10, the Betty and Barney Hill abduction case, one of the most famous UFO cases of all time.
And, we've talked about UFOs before on this show. We've gone over government investigations and all of that. But this one's different somehow.
It is, yeah. This isn't just grainy photos or radar blips. This is about two people, a couple, and what they claimed happened to them.
A story that really captured the public's imagination.
Absolutely. So before we get into the events of that night, let's set the scene a bit. According to a report we have, 1961 America was a place on edge. You had the Cold War, the space race. Yeah, but also the civil rights movement was in full swing. A lot of social upheaval.
I guess you could say it was a time ripe for, well, maybe seeing things in the sky.
Possibly. People were looking for answers, for something bigger than themselves.
Okay, so that's the world we're in. Now let's talk about Betty and Barney Hill. Who were they? What were they doing before all of this happened?
They weren't, UFO fanatics or anything like that. Betty was a social worker. Barney worked for the Postal Service.
Pretty average people then.
Yeah, until it wasn't. Another interesting thing, they were an interracial couple. In 1961, that was still a big deal.
Right, adds another layer to their story, doesn't it? How people perceived them.
Definitely. So here we are, September 19th, 1961. The Hills are driving home after a vacation in Montreal. It's late. They're passing through the White Mountains of New Hampshire, just enjoying the scenery.
Just a regular drive home, nothing too exciting.
Yeah, at first, no. But then Betty, she sees something in the sky.
What? Like a plane? A shooting star?
Not exactly. She describes it as a light. But this wasn't just any light. It was moving in a way that didn't make sense, and it was getting bigger, brighter.
Okay, now I'm intrigued. What did Barney think?
He wasn't so sure at first, thought maybe it was just a star or something.
Skeptical, huh?
Very. But then they pulled over to get a better look, and, that's when things really started to get strange.
Because of the binoculars.
Right. Betty grabbed her binoculars, and through them she could see this object, spinning, glowing, moving erratically.
So it's pretty strange.
It was.
Yeah.
And then Barney decided to take a look too, and his skepticism, it just vanished. He later described this large, flat object, almost like a pancake, hovering there.
Okay, that's pretty creepy, just hanging there in the air. What happened next?
Well, that's when things escalate even further, because through the windows of this object, Barney claims he saw figures.
But he saw what? Like
Yeah.
beings.
Beings. Humanoid shapes. Standing there, watching them. It freaked him out completely. He later described this overwhelming sense of fear, like a primal instinct to run.
And he did run, right?
He bolted back to the car, yelling to Betty that they were going to capture them. They took off down the road as fast as they could, trying to get away from whatever they'd just seen.
So this object, it just disappeared then.
It followed them. They heard this beeping sound, felt a tingling sensation, and then suddenly they were overcome with this intense drowsiness.
So missing time.
That's what they experienced. The next thing they knew, they were miles down the road, hours had passed, and they had no memory of how they got there. And to make it even stranger, they found some physical evidence when they got home.
What kind of evidence?
Betty's dress was torn and stained, and there was this weird pinkish substance on it. Barney's shoes were scuffed up. His binocular strap was broken.
Damage from what?
They didn't know, but they both felt like something had happened, something they couldn't explain, something terrifying.
So they got back home, shaken, but physically okay. Did they try to just, I don't know, forget about it?
They couldn't. The experience stayed with them, especially Betty. She started having these vivid dreams, these recurring images that felt more like memories than dreams.
Memories of the abduction.
That's what she believed. She described being taken aboard a craft, these beings examining her.
What about Barney? Was he having dreams too?
He wasn't having dreams, but he was having problems. Insomnia, anxiety, ulcers. It was like his body was reacting to something, even if he couldn't remember it consciously.
Pretty scary stuff. So at this point, they've got missing time, physical evidence, and now these strange dreams and health problems. Did they go to the authorities? Tell someone what happened.
They did. They reported their experience to Pease Air Force Base, and from there, it went up to Project Blue Book.
Project Blue Book. the government's UFO investigation program. Did they take the Hills seriously?
Not really. Their initial conclusion was that there wasn't enough evidence to say what had happened. They were polite, but basically dismissed it.
Case closed. Not quite right.
No. The Hills were determined to find answers. The Hills, they weren't satisfied with, "we don't know." Betty, she started researching UFOs, trying to make sense of it all. She even reached out to NEDCAP, that civilian UFO research group we've talked about before.
NACAP. Yeah, they investigated a lot of these cases back then. Did they find the Hills credible?
Their investigator, Walter Webb, he did. He thought they were being truthful, genuinely believed they had experienced something unusual.
So you have the Air Force not really taking them seriously and civilian investigators interested, but, not having all the answers. What did the Hills do?
They decided to seek professional help. And this is where a key figure enters the story. Dr. Benjamin Simon.
A psychiatrist. Why a psychiatrist?
He specialized in hypnotherapy. And the Hills, they were desperate for answers to try and uncover what happened during that missing time.
So hypnosis, that's where things get really interesting and a little bit controversial, right?
Exactly. A lot of debate surrounds the use of hypnosis in these cases. But for the Hills, it seemed like their only hope of getting some answers.
So Dr. Simon starts working with them. Separately, right?
Yeah, he conducted individual hypnosis sessions with both Betty and Barney over several months. And it was during these sessions that the details of the alleged abduction, they started to emerge.
Okay, so under hypnosis, what did they reveal?
Well, Barney described being taken aboard the craft. These beings, they were communicating with him telepathically, examining him, taking samples.
And he wasn't afraid.
Oh, he was terrified. He talked about their eyes, how large and black they were, almost hypnotic. It was clearly a traumatic experience for him.
What about Betty? Did her sessions, did they match up with Barney's account?
In many ways, yes. She also described a medical examination, but her experience seemed a little less, frightening.
Really? What does she remember?
Well, she talked about this one being a sort of leader who seemed to show some compassion towards her. She even described being shown a star map.
Wait, a star map, like a map of space.
That's what she claimed. She said it was like a chart showing trade routes between different star systems.
Okay, now that's fascinating. Did she describe the map? Could she reproduce it?
She did. Under hypnosis, she drew a version of this map, and it's become one of the most debated aspects of the entire case.
People trying to match it up to real star systems.
Exactly. Looking for proof, some kind of validation of her story.
So you have these two people under hypnosis recounting these remarkably similar experiences. What did Dr. Simon make of it all?
He was cautious. He acknowledged that the experiences were very real to Betty and Barney, but he also suggested they could be a shared delusion.
A delusion.
Possibly brought on by stress or even, their social circumstances at the time. Remember, they were an interracial couple in the early 60s. Not exactly an easy thing back then.
So he wasn't ruling out aliens, but he was open to other explanations too.
Right. He emphasized that he was a psychiatrist, not a UFO investigator. But regardless of the cause, he agreed that the experience had had a profound impact on both of them.
Okay, so we have these hypnosis sessions, detailed accounts, possible explanations, and then it all goes public, right?
It does. In 1965, their story leaks to the press. And suddenly, Betty and Barney Hill, they're front page news.
I bet that was crazy. This was before the internet, before everyone had a camera phone. That must have been a whole different level of media frenzy.
It was. The Hills became reluctant celebrities, giving interviews, appearing on TV.
And the public's reaction?
Mixed, of course. Fascination, skepticism, ridicule. It was the birth of the modern alien abduction narrative, really.
And this was before, Close Encounters or any of those movies, right?
Yeah.
So their story was truly breaking new ground.
Absolutely. And then in 1966, John G. Fuller, a journalist, he publishes The Interrupted Journey.
The book that basically made their case famous.
Yeah, it laid out their story, the hypnosis sessions, everything. And it became a bestseller, solidifying the Hills' place in UFO lore.
Okay, so their story is out there. The book is a hit. But I'm guessing not everyone was convinced?
Of course not. The skeptics, they had a field day. They pointed to possible misidentified objects, psychological stress, even the influence of pop culture, saying maybe they were just, fantasizing.
Right, and the whole hypnosis thing, that's always been controversial. People saying it plants false memories, that you can't really trust what comes out in those sessions.
Exactly. It's a valid criticism. But even with the doubts, there were elements of the Hills story that were really hard to explain away. The consistency of their accounts, the emotional impact, the physical evidence, it all added up to a pretty compelling mystery.
So where do you stand on all of this? Believer or skeptic?
I think it's less about taking sides and more about recognizing the impact of this case. Whether you believe in the literal truth of their abduction or not, what's undeniable is the influence it's had on our culture and our understanding of what an alien encounter could look like.
It's true. Their story, it's become part of our collective consciousness. The images, the themes, it's all seeped into our movies, our books, our very way of thinking about aliens.
Right. The Hills case, it was a turning point. It opened the door to a whole new way of thinking about our place in the universe and the possibilities of what might be out there. And that's something worth exploring further, don't you think?
Definitely. And speaking of exploring further,
Hmm.
I'm really intrigued by what you were saying earlier about AI and its potential to shed new light on this case and others like it. Maybe after the break, we can dive into that a bit more.
Sounds like a plan.
Welcome back to Beyond the Unknown. Before the break, we were talking about AI and its potential to maybe finally solve some of these UFO mysteries.
Yeah, AI could really change the game when it comes to UFO research, analyze all that data we have in ways humans just can't.
It's pretty exciting to think about, but we have to remember AI is just a tool, right? It's not some magic answer machine.
Definitely. It's only as good as the information it's given and the people interpreting its results.
We have to be careful not to just blindly trust whatever it tells us. We still need good old-fashioned human judgment.
Exactly. Critical thinking, skepticism, those are still essential, even in the age of AI.
So let's say we put together like a dream team, right? AI experts, UFO researchers, maybe even a psychologist or two.
Okay, I like where this is going. What would we ask them to focus on with the Betty and Barney Hill case?
Well, for starters, I'd want them to use AI to look at all those UFO sightings we have on record. The radar data, the pilot reports, all that stuff.
Yeah, see if there are any patterns, any connections we've missed.
And what about the psychological side of things? Could AI help us understand how trauma or memory might play a role in these abduction stories?
I think so. AI could analyze the language people use in their testimonies, look for signs of deception or genuine distress, maybe even compare different accounts to see what they have in common.
It's like we're entering a whole new era of UFO research.
Where technology and human curiosity can work together to uncover the truth.
So what do you think? Could AI be the key to finally solving the Betty and Barney Hill case?
It's definitely possible AI could analyze Betty's star map in ways we never could before.
Yeah, imagine if it found a match in some distant star system.
Or revealed a hidden message.
And what about the hypnosis sessions? Could AI help us separate real memories from false ones?
Maybe it could analyze voice patterns or subtle cues that humans might miss.
It's amazing to think about all the possibilities.
And not just for the Hill case, but for all the unexplained phenomena out there.
We could use AI to investigate crop circles, ghost sightings, you name it.
It could revolutionize our understanding of the unknown.
Well, on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive.
It's been a fascinating journey back to 1961.
And who knows, maybe someday with the help of AI, we'll finally unravel the mystery of what really happened to Betty and Barney Hill.
Until then, keep those minds open and keep looking up at the stars.
Thanks for joining us on Beyond the Unknown. We'll see you next time for another adventure into the unexplained.